Hello and good evening, everybody, and welcome to Precious Nights, and welcome to those of you who are new to Precious Nights. Welcome to the Precious Nights family. My name is Irish, and I'm going to be your host this evening. Before I kick off and do any introductions, I just want to give you a quick intro and background and history to the Precious brand, which was established in 2007 by Feluke Akinlose. And it was essentially set up to really champion entrepreneurs and intrapreneurs, so those women of color who are working in businesses, really to just who are paving the way, really just to champion them and give them a stonking round of applause for the contribution that they are making across various sectors, from finance to tech to creative and everything in between. Now, there are five components to the Precious brand. So the first is the Precious Awards, and tickets are on sale for the 15th annual Precious Awards, which are taking place on the 24th of November. So do get online, preciousAwards.com, to book your ticket. Next, we have the Precious Community, which is a WhatsApp group, and you can find us Precious online on Instagram or on your socials, and just drop us a message and we can connect you to that WhatsApp group. It's an excellent community where we support one another. And then you have the Precious Nights, which are here, and we have the Precious Magazine too. And that is the longest standing online platform for women of color, and it's packed with empowering and equipping content. And I always say, if you are somebody that is looking to get your first article in print, then come over to Precious Online so we can give you that platform, because we really want to hear from you. And the fifth component of the Precious brand is our merch. So that is t-shirts, that is cups. Christmas is coming. You need stocking fillers. Get onto our website and pick up some merch too. And I also want to give a big thank you to our sponsors and hosts for this evening, which is the Business and IP Centre, which is part of the British Library. Now, in terms of the format of the session, we always have a theme, and this theme is about doing business for good, because it can be challenging in any event, like starting your own enterprise, but we're going to explore whether those challenges are any different if you are kind of coming from a social entrepreneur perspective. And the discussion will be structured. I'm going to, in a minute, do some introductions to myself and to the panelists, and then we're going to engage in a conversation, just a Q&A. And at any point in the time, we'd love to hear from you. So please do pop your questions. There's an ask a question box under the video feed. We really want to hear your questions and put them to the panel, because this is your opportunity. If you're thinking about entrepreneurship, social entrepreneurship, this is now your chance to get your questions put in front of an esteemed panel. So I'm going to start and introduce, we have two panelists today. We have Sabrina Dennis, who is a Chief Executive of First Class Foundation, which is formerly called the First Class Legacy. And that's a Birmingham-based charity working with young people aged 13 to 25. And the charity focuses on connecting young people to their purpose by creating pathways and training, apprenticeships, and other opportunities, helping them build mental health resilience and ultimately reducing youth violence and issues relating to negative lifestyles. And Sabrina is also the author of the educational program, Education for Life, which is a reflective personal journey tool for young people aged 13 to 16 years old. Good. Hello, Sabrina. Good to have you in the Zoom room. And we also have Danielle Bridge, and Danielle is the founder and CEO of ABC Life Support, which is a first aid training organization delivering physical and mental health first aid training to organizations and individuals across the UK. Danielle's been in business for over 10 years, so she has some skin in the game. And in that time, she's helped many organizations to understand the mandatory requirements around health and safety in the workplace. And Danielle is an associate mental health First Aid England instructor, wellbeing and mental health instructor for British Safety Council, and chairs the Cambridge Mental Health Network. There's a lot to dig into then, Danielle, especially around what's been happening in the pandemic and the impact that that's had on individuals' well-being. And in terms of what I do, my day job is that I run a recruitment and training organization called Diva. And I always say it's by name and not by nature, unless you owe me money. And we focus on recruitment in film, TV, in the music industry. Don't get twisted, it's not about singing, dancing, acting. It's about all of the support roles in the background. And I also work a lot with organizations as large as Universal Music to small record labels, really helping them create inclusive workspaces. So that's me. Ladies, I'll start with you, Sabrina. What prompted the move into kind of social entrepreneurship?
Oh gosh, that's a really good question, because it's something that I never ever thought I'd ever be doing. To be honest, I was led. It's kind of like purpose for me. I think we've always, as a individual and with my husband. So I'm going to backtrack and then go forward to answer your question. I run the organisation, First Class Foundation, with my husband, who's a founder trustee of the organisation. But we started out as young people with a passion to just help young people. My husband came from quite a disadvantaged kind of background, fell into negative lifestyle, spent some time away as a young person, and kind of we knew that there was a gap. So there's a gap in the West Midlands and actually across the entire UK, actually, where young people from that they would try and say are hard to engage or disenfranchised, and all those stereotypes that we give young people. For them to access the positive provisions that were out there, for some reason, they would always miss them. And my husband was one of those young people. So we decided to set up initially what was called First Class Youth Network. And that was just a network of young people that could come together on a Friday in almost like a youth club space, create ideas, put on events to engage the community, to ensure that they got access to things that other young people were accessing. But as a result of us putting on these events and attracting sort of 300, 500, 1,000, 3,000 plus young people, organizations would then come to us and say, can you do the same thing for us, please? Can you engage people, these young people? How have you got them all in the room? How are they all here? Why are they talking to you? What is it that you do differently to what we do? And so that was how sort of the entrepreneurship and the journey began. We had a bumpy ride, if I'm honest. We were young, naive, relied heavily on grant funding, started out in 2005, lots of money, labour, and then fast forward to 2010, Conservative comes in, the axe drops, there's no funding, and so does our company. Our company goes with it.
Oh, I'm going to stick a pin in that because I want to come back to that. That's a really good point around financing.
Yeah.
And sustainability, especially when it comes to social enterprises.
Yeah.
So, Danielle, can you answer the same question? How did you make that move into kind of social entrepreneurship?
Yeah, thank you. Great question. And actually, following on from Sabrina, it was my passion as to why I set up my business. So back in 2005, I was working for St. John Ambulance as a trainer. So it's something I did for a living. And then I had my first child in 2010. I decided I didn't want to go back to work, but the skills that I had attained as a trainer, I kept. And actually, it was kind of during weaning times, my second child came along in 2008, I think. Yeah, 2009 she came along. And I decided I was going to set up on my own, but with a purpose to try and target people who would otherwise not be able to afford it. So again, backtracking, when I had my child, I would be what we classify as an NCT mum, so in that, National Childbirth Trust. I could afford the learning, I could afford to go on courses, I could afford these things to be able to do. But when I was growing up, I grew up in really difficult circumstances, and my mum at the time could never have afforded to go on a first aid course just because it's a good idea. And we lived in a refuge at some point as well. So unfortunately, there was a lot of women who were fleeing domestic violence, who were in the same situation. And it's only when I founded my business did I realise that, looking back on my past, that's the reason why I set up the company, was for those women. It was to champion those women who could otherwise not get access to literally life-saving skills. And I set up my CIC with them in mind. What I found difficult, obviously, was nobody wants to say, do you know what, I'm here, I can't afford this stuff, I can't access it. And I found it quite difficult in the beginning, trying to target people who desperately needed it. But we found a way of, by working with organisations who already work with the target audience, by partnershiping with these impact partners, we actually reach our target audience, which means that people don't have to know that they're getting it for free. People don't have to know that, you know, but we're doing something good. People just access the same level of training that anyone else would. So that's how I founded my business, kind of with that demographic in mind, looking back on my own past. And that's my passion. That was my why.
I really like the fact that you both kind of are in line with purpose as being the core. And I love what you said as well, Danielle, about using your transferable skills. Because I think sometimes when people are making that transition, even if it's just from one job to the next, or a different industry, or even into entrepreneurship, is that it's almost like they forget all of the skills and experiences that they've built up. But I like that you said that you transferred them. You used an acronym, Danielle, that I'd just like you just to explain for people who might not know. You said CIC. What is that? What does that mean?
So my company is a community interest company. So community interest company is a business that is founded with charitable purposes, effectively. And what's really good about the business model, and ironically, when I founded the business, the CIC model wasn't available. It wasn't a thing. And so I set it up as a limited company in 2010 until 2012, when the option to transfer to a CIC came about. And what that means is that we have an asset lock. So if the business folds for whatever reason, then any of my directors will not get that money. It's not for profit. And we have an asset lock, and my asset lock is actually Women's Refuge UK. And so the money that we have in the business will automatically go to that company should the business fold. But it means then that we utilize trade, and it's really important that our business relies heavily on trade. So it's lucky because first aid is mandatory. So we're quite lucky that people have to do first aid training, right? So we say, well, do it, and do it with us, because with your money, we're going to go and do business for good. And so it's very attractive on people's corporate social responsibility pieces. And we find that by offering something that they already need, it's a win-win.
Right, okay. And what about you, Sabrina? Do you have a similar structure to your business as well?
So we set up as a charity. So after the whole collapse of, and it was private limited, which again has its challenges for social enterprise. So we decided, as we kind of grew and repurposed the organization, that we knew we had to be enterprising. We knew that we wanted to secure grant funding or apply for funding, but we also knew that we wanted to be able to put that into the organization and also be able to pay staff and do lots of different things and fundraise. You can't do that under a private limited company. There's too many restrictions. And especially if you're applying for grant funding for some of the projects and programs that we run, they would never give it to a limited company because you can make money. So that's the catch. And so we decided to go for a charitable status. And one of the reasons we do that is because we work in some of the most gritty and really difficult situations with some families. We decided that we'd have a strong governance system. As you know, when you're a charity, you're accountable to your board of trustees, but also to the charity commission, which means that every single penny that you get within the organization has to be accounted for and has to be used for charitable purposes. So there's no way I can just say, oh, I'm going to go on a shopping spree and buy everybody things that they need for the organization without justification. And that's one of the things I absolutely love. I love the accountability, and I love the fact that we can fundraise, we can sell products and services, we can also go through grant funding and tenders. So it's quite a robust system, and it enables us to go wider than our local reach, which is what we were before. We're now sort of regional and working on becoming national. So it helps a lot in that way.
Brilliant. So you just touched on something like financing, because sometimes when people think about social enterprises, they think, oh, we rely heavily on grant funding and not necessarily don't consider sustainability in the way that you do maybe if you're running a limited company. So maybe Sabrina, can you talk about and do compare from your past experience, because I love to hear I think it's important highs and the lows about how you've raised money, like where does your income come from and are you becoming sustainable?
So the massive learning, and I think everybody when it starts from passion, you go with the delivery because you just want to get it done, you want to do the work, but you don't necessarily think about the sustainability plan. You don't necessarily have a plan for that. So our learning from that was that, okay, we've got to be enterprise first We've got to think about how we're going to sustain the good work that we can do, that we can trade products and services and monetize some of the projects that we created. So that's what we've done within the charity. We do have grant funding, but one of the big things I was very, very clear on when we first started is that any grant funding that we had to be longer than, it couldn't be 6 months, it couldn't be 3 months, it had to be a year by minimum, because that's the only way it's going to give us the time to establish what we've got and grow. I feel like sometimes when you're in sort of startup mode, you go for the small parts, the 5Ks, the 10Ks, because they're easy to win, right? But you know what? You deliver the project and you're back to square one because you've had no time to work out a sustainability plan for it. And you can't really sustain something within 6 months. It needs longer. You need longer to incubate that and grow it properly. So we do three things, and we monetize, as I said, monetize the projects and that we do. We also do a lot of consultation for organizations as well. We do a lot of merch, stuff like that. And then we do the fundraising at the same time. And never underestimate the power of small donors and small givers. You know, if people always really want the 10K or the 50K giant sponsorship deal or whatever, but if you've got 1,000 people all giving a £10 a month, that makes a big difference, and it's constant. So that's what I kind of champion for, those small regular givers, and we do work really, really hard on that, as well as monetizing and then going for the grant funds and tenders and opportunities as well. So there's loads of different income streams, but I think when you start off with a passion, you do tend to think, right, where can I get funding from? And traditionally, we've always done it the wrong way around. We probably started and done the work first and then thought about how it's going to be paid for after. When actually what we need to do is plan it out, budget for it, really risk assess it, and then see where it's going to take us.
I love that. And what about you, Danielle? Because you mentioned trade in organizations that you connected to. Can you talk about how you generate revenue?
Yeah, so we deliver physical first aid training, and physical first aid training is mandatory. Every organization across the UK in this country has to have first aid training if you have more than 5 members of staff. So that's written in statutes, written in law. So we just deliver that mandatory training. But what we use the profit for is to offset that and deliver training for free or highly subsidized by organizations or for individuals that can't otherwise afford it. And we also work with impact partners. So I mentioned that earlier. Impact partners are organizations that we work with to be able to target our beneficiaries. So for example, we work with housing associations, we work with local authorities, we work with other charities who have the target audience, and they then use us to deliver the training, and that's where we then get the impact. So that's why I said earlier on, nobody ever has to put their hand up for what we can offer. It is offered by working with these organizations that are already utilizing these enterprises, and that's what I'm really passionate about. I don't want people to have to ask for a handout. I don't want people to have to ask for this training that they should just get as a matter of course, right? Because they are parents. And it started off actually with pediatric first aid because that was my kind of specialty. Right. But because I had 2 children, and that's just, and my mum's story as well. So it's now obviously grown. Today I was at the Shakespeare Globe doing their training. I was at the London Film Academy yesterday delivering their training, and they love working with us. That's pretty cool. Yeah, it's nice. But we work with them because they work with other beneficiaries, but they also really, really believe in our product. They believe in working with us because of the work that we do. And any company can deliver first aid training. There's hundreds of them. Yeah. But what makes us unique is the fact that we offer it back to the community, and that's everybody can see it. It's transparent. We thrive on that message. So we get our funding, we get our money by people delivering training. We just deliver training. We sell our product, and they pick up on it. And in terms of grant funding, I know that Sabrina was talking about funding. We can actually access grants as a CIC. We can also fundraise. So after the Christian Eriksen collapse earlier on this year, when the footballer collapsed on the pitch, we decided to work with a local football club and offer free courses for anyone that wanted it, because that's our impact. And it was only an hour-long CPR session, but we ran like 4 over a month. And the people that could go on that were anyone. We didn't ask for any means testing or anything like that, but they wanted to give back. So we offer the back of them talking about it. We offered now a donation page. So because they were like, look, this is free and I can afford it, and I really like the idea it's free, but how can we give back? So we checked our statutes. We are allowed to ask for donations, so we asked for donations. And what that means is that we can then continue to deliver free sessions for the community as and when people need it. So yeah, lots of different income funding, but for us, we rely 95% on our trade.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting model. Like, as in a commercial, you've got a real commercial remit, a real commercial product that people need. It's mandatory, but ultimately, it's enabling you to have a strong social remit as well attached to the business. It's a really interesting way of working, because you can become more sustainable and less reliant, I imagine, on grant funding, because there's a clear service that you're providing to businesses, irrespective actually of sector. It's quite wide.
Absolutely.
About fundraising, and can you maybe just dig a little bit deeper into, like, do you use things like crowdfunding and that kind of thing? Have you done that, or is it a large, like, events that you stage? Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so I love what Danielle just said as well about those impact partners, because that's another way of securing a sustainable model. So another one of our ways of working is forming strong partnerships with organisations that need our service or need to get to access the young people that we work with anyway. So that's a really good way. And again, it's better. Everything's better in partnership. It's hard to do things on your own. But for us, in terms of fundraising, so there's a couple of strategies. We do events. So August just gone, it's going to sound really crazy, we actually launched the charity. I know, right? We've been around for how long? But we never actually did a proper full-on launch. Like, we did a soft launch, we did a strategic launch and all of that stuff, but we did a proper full-on launch, and that was a fundraising event. And we did it. It was the theme was back to Wakanda. So everybody was dressed in a traditional African garments, and we had African drummers, stilt walkers, all of it there at the event. It was a beautiful event. But within that, it was an opportunity for us to share about what we do. One of the things I'm really keen on is writing impact reports and sharing our work, and then being able to share that with people, stakeholders who are in the room, do things like raffles, silent auctions. That event for us was free to deliver. So and then on top of the income from ticket sales, we make money that way. We also have merchandise and stuff like that. So we've got limited edition t-shirts. So we do every Black History Month, and they're black. And they say, I am first class on there. And we give them, but what we've done with that is, it's great, it sounds fantastic, but on a small scale, it's like 1 or 2 people could be wearing them. But this is where strategic partnerships make a real difference. So what we've done is partnered with a couple of corporate organizations who have a CSR remit. They want to engage with the community, and they want to do stuff. They want to open up pathways to law and to banking and different things for young Black people. So they bought a batch of our t-shirts, which is great. That raises money for us. It also raises our profile within their organizations and opens up the door for more corporate sponsorship, which is another avenue for fundraising for us. So we're always looking at ways outside of the traditional grants and things like that. We do apply for tenders. Tendering is a long process, but it's incredibly rewarding and worth it if you're successful. I know this because we've won tenders that have lasted 3 years for a project where I was finalist for Precious Awards 2017 under the Kitchen Table Talks program that I wrote back then. That program is now a commissioned service through a tender that I won and wrote. So not only is it enabling me to grow the charity, I'm able to employ people. I'm also able to sustain a project that started off with a £2,000 seed for the long term and take the thing nationally. So for us, it's very, very multifaceted. I spend a lot of time networking with people, strategically talking to people and getting out there. But then I also spend a lot of time writing tenders and things like that as well, in a business sense, because it's got to be enterprise first. In order for this to stay forever, we've got to look at how we bring the money in. So that's mostly what we do.
Yeah, I really love that way of thinking, like, because as I said earlier, some people don't really look at social enterprises as in having that same kind of entrepreneurial drive, that this has to be sustainable outside of grant funding.
Yeah.
So I'm loving that energy. And what about you, Danielle? Are there any kind of have you tendered also? And if so, are there any platforms that you could recommend that people, even you, Sabrina, people can connect to?
Yeah, so my funding or tenders, if you like, come from local authorities. So it will be local authorities for mandatory training. That's what we go for, and that's all we go for. Because everything, and actually it's really weird, but I speak to quite a lot of commissioners who are in the charity sector, who are responsible for giving out grant funding to an awful lot of organisations. And what's quite interesting is that they do not necessarily give us the money that we might ask for, because we are too good at trading. Yes. And actually, as a business, I would find it unethical to go for funding which we do not need to be able to do more of the work that we do. I'm happy with what we do, and I'm happy with the impact we have. And also, as Sabrina said, writing tenders and grant applications is long. So if we don't if we don't have to do it, I'm not doing it. So from our point of view, I'm very blessed to be able to say that in our specific business model, the tenders are great, because again, mandatory training, which is required, local authorities, they lap that up. It's fantastic, and I'm really happy to be able to provide that. But we don't actually go for grant funding anymore or charitable funding anymore, because there are charities that need that money way more than we do. We can deliver our impact by trade. So I think it's quite an interesting split between a CIC and a charity. And also, if each of those organisations can understand how the other organisation can work, then they can really, really, really complement one another. Because I think that way, then we can both help one another to become sustainable, right? So it's a really useful thing to know.
But I also think you make a really interesting point, is that you have to understand your business model, your financing streams, and then put your energies there rather than trying to just scramble for everything because it's available and you think some money's better than no money, which can actually end up wasting a lot of your time. So it's being quite strategic about what tenders you apply for, where your money's coming from, and investing your time there. So Sabrina, you talked about tendering quite a bit. Do you have any platforms you want to throw in?
Danielle's laughing. She knows how long it takes.
They're hard to write though, isn't it?
Oh my God.
All the information that they want, it's like your life story.
It is. But do you know also, and again, this comes from, I guess, when you set something up and you know how many rings of fire you've had to jump through to get to where you are, you kind of think, well, if I can do that, I can do anything, because that's how I feel when I've completed a tender. I do feel like, you know, I've answered every single thing. Like, they know my inner seam leg measurement. Like, it is everything. But okay, I'm going to behave now. But it is that deep. It is a lot of information, but it also shows us how much governance and regulation that as an organization you need to have in place. And those systems and processes are incredibly important. And again, I go back to the point of when you're setting something up or you're doing something out of passion, you do it because you love it. You want to help, you want to change the world or whatever it is you're trying to do. But you might not necessarily have that infrastructure set up and in place where you can apply for tenders. So one of the things that I just spent a lot of time doing was just learning before I even try to apply for anything, just what even is this? And in the West Midlands, and I suppose it's across the UK, but there's different tender portals for different local authorities. The first thing you can do, which is quite straightforward, is just register on them. Register on them and and they will send you through, because you're kind of putting keywords for things that you can deliver. So if it's training will come up and it will shoot right into your inbox, and you can just look at what types of things are out there. There are government contracts, there are home office contracts, there are so many things that are open and accessible to people. There's HS2 contracts, there's Commonwealth Games stuff going on, you know, there's loads of stuff out there. But if you don't kind of put your nose in a little bit just to see what's there, you'll miss out. So that's the first thing I'd recommend. Just any kind of tender portal, go through your local authority. For us, it's like Birmingham City Council, Sandwell Council, wherever it is, we go through there. Once you've registered, there'll be tenders that come up and it'll give you like this ITT, so it's initial tender invitation. And this is the part that is long, because if you don't actually know what you're trying to do, you literally, it's difficult to do. You do need to have all of your policies and procedures in place. You do need to have your insurances in place. You do need to know what your costings are for things. So, you know, if you've got a rate card or a tariff sheet, you need to know what that is, but you also need to be aware of your competitors. that are out there that are going to be going for these tenders with you, against you. You know, you need to know, and there's a criteria, so there'll be a percentage that you've got to score against to be successful. And once you've won a contract or a tender and you've gone through that process, you'll work with the local authority. But once you're on that portal system, it's easier then to win other ones, and it's easier then to get yourself into the routine of looking. But I understand that if you're setting up a business just now, or you're just getting on your journey, dedicating what can take probably a week, 2 weeks, right, Danielle? It's not a quick thing if you've not done it before. You know, you don't necessarily have that time to give to applying to tenders, but I would certainly say just register on the websites and just see what's out there, especially with HS2, especially with like Commonwealth Games. There's stuff for everybody and anybody. It doesn't matter what it is. Just have a look and just see.
I like the
fact
idea.
that Sabrina, went back earlier on and said, you know, when you start a business out of a passion, you just do the work. And I think actually when you just do the work, you just, right, that's it, I'm helping them, that's what I want, and you drive and you drive and you drive. And actually, it was only quite late that this kind of governance stuff came up for us, and this opportunity for tenders came about when you settled with the work and you knew who your target audience were or who your beneficiaries were. And then you have that headspace to go, right, okay, well, I'm doing it. I've proved that concept.
Yeah.
People want it. Okay, so now what can I do about it? And that's when you have that headspace to go through and look for tenders, etc., etc. But in the beginning, if Sabrina's anything like I was, it was like, right, I just want to train.
Yeah, I just want to go. Just want to go. Just want to get out there. Just want to save the kids. Just need to help the young people. That's all I want to do. Like, I need to help the young people, but I didn't think about how I was going to do, and actually how it was going to become sustainable. The project that changed our whole trajectory as an organization was our mental health project, and it's called Dear Youngers. It's part of the Shift in the Dial program in partnership. So I talked about partnership before with Birmingham Mental Health Foundation Trust, the Centre for Mental Health, and also the Birmingham Repertory Theatre. Massive partnership. We drew down a significant sum of money, and it lasted. That project started and has still not finished yet because COVID's extended it 3 years. So that 3 years has given us headspace, like you say, Danielle, to be able to think about, okay, now I've got some money coming in, because let's be honest, we all need to be able to pay our bills and need to be able to eat and not stress about that. You know, now I've got that sorted, and people can kind of relax a little bit, not take off the gas completely, but just relax. I can now look at how I can do other things, and I can think about those systems and processes that my organization needs. But I understand it, because you just run and like, right, I'm ready, set up, go.
Anyone that buys from you, you're like, yay, you're my friend. It's like gold star for me. Someone likes what I'm doing. It's like, never underestimate that process. You know, because that enthusiasm to just get out there, to just do, helps you start to discover, one, who your clients are, who you don't want to work with, because you want to work, because you try to work with everyone, you realize, I don't want to work with everyone.
Very quickly.
It helps you refine it, and you learn so much in that kind of naive early stage of business. So never underestimate it, I think, because it does get you to the point where you can actually, you know, win a contract and then begin to, right, okay, so having done all of this stuff, what actually works for the business, what works for me, and what's going to, you know, ultimately help us become more sustainable. So we've talked about, you know, that trigger, that why you decided, driven by purpose. We've talked about the legal structures you both opted for, and how you're, you know, generating money and making your businesses sustainable. Can you talk about, like, and you touched on it a little bit earlier, Danielle, about defining who your audience is, because you do start wide, but then how do you like narrow that down and then just...
Yeah, you know what? It's a really good question. And I struggled with that. I struggled with trying to define, and I had lots of people over the years saying to me, why are you doing this? Like, you could just run a limited company and make shed loads of cash. All the profit you could take as a director or as a founder. And they didn't get it, because it's not their why, it was mine, right? So it was like, I was going, but there are a lot of people here, you know, when I think back on my time, etc., etc. And I remember having some brand work done with a Precious Award winner.
That brand was
brand by me.
And you was brand by me, Colette.
Big up, Colette.
She's great.
So
She's
yeah, I
great.
have a piece of work done with her because I struggled with trying to. I felt like a fraud. I felt like as a business, I kept just churning out work and doing this work, but never really contacting who I needed to get in contact with. I could never kind of reach out. And it transpired that the reason I couldn't reach out to the people I wanted to reach out to was because none of them were in a position to reach out and ask for help.
Right.
And that took me a long time to try and figure out in my mind how I was going to work with people to get hold of these people.
Yeah.
And actually, it's after the brand work that I did with Colette, where she helped me understand that the relationships and the partnerships that I'd already built up were my gateway to that. So one of my earliest clients, for example, when we were doing pediatric first aid, was the Barnardo's Centre, Barnardo's for the country. Barnardo's are one of our license holders. That means that I've delivered a train the trainer program to 10 members of Barnardo staff, and they deliver pediatric first aid training throughout the family centres that they run in the southeast of England. So they're one of our impact partners. Now I know that by working with individual families, because their targets are difficult to reach families, we're getting them.
Right.
We're doing it just by delivering the training that it is that we're delivering.
Yeah.
Another client is One YMCA. Again, the same kind of training that we deliver, because their targets are very specific and match our targets specifically. So by working with the staff at Barnardo's and One YMCA, we automatically reach our target audience, and we share that data number in terms of the amount of people that they've trained, so that we can then report on our impact reporting. Some of our clients are charities who we deliver free first aid training to, and they go towards our numbers. And one of my clients is a Romsey Mill charity here in Cambridge. They run a young parents program. So these are young people who are expecting babies, and they're 14, 15 years old, 16 years old. And we deliver training to them specifically at no charge. And we then report that back via impact at the end of the year. So we do an awful lot of partnership working, but we also do some direct to our beneficiaries. But again, it's done in a way that they're just offered a training course that everyone else is offered. Where they come from and what they do is it's a by the by.
So it's through partnerships, strategic partnerships, that you managed to reach your audience. But you've always known who they were. It's just trying to know how to find them. Yeah,
because they weren't going, hi, I need your help. They were not in a position to say, you know what, I need this training, I'm desperate for it, or I'm really worried about my child, choking, or whatever it was. And some of our strategic partnerships are actually local authorities. So we get some referrals from actual local authorities and social services to be able to help some people keep their kids. If they can prove that they are able to look after their children by learning how to look after them in an emergency, because they might have had a child removed before. By doing this, it goes towards their credits, or it stands up really well for them in court. To keep, so really kind of deep-rooted impact work that we do just by teaching people how to have first aid training.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's a really important connection to make and lesson, I guess, piece of knowledge to share with those of you who are tuned in, is that to think bigger than yourself. Think about those people that are actually speaking to your audience, and think about how you can work to collaborate to make sure, on the one hand, they're getting what they want, and you are also kind of providing your services and support to that audience directly. What about you, Sabrina, in terms of identifying your kind of clients?
So for us, it's a bit like yours, Danielle. We're in a situation where we work with, as I said, the more difficult to engage young people, and I don't believe they're difficult to engage. It's just that people don't know how to engage them properly.
Yes.
We're always so hard to find.
Honestly, it really annoys me, but it's the truth. They are easy to engage if you just know how to talk to them and understand who they are. But what we work, the types of families and people are those who are entrenched in youth violence normally, or are on the cusp of getting involved in gangs, knives, whatever. We tend to work a lot with local authorities. We work with youth offending teams across the West Midlands and West Mercia region. So that's sort of 15 youth offending services that our services are attached to. Youth offending teams refer young people to us. Our Kitchen Table Talks project, which is, I can't say project, I say that because it started off as a project service, is the one where we support families who've got young people in custody or on a youth order. So those families are never going to come forward and say, I need help, because they already feel stigmatized. They already feel judged. They already feel like they've failed their young people and everyone else around them. So we have to go to them. And that's part of our outreach and engagement strategy. But it's also working in partnership with local authorities, youth justice boards, the courts, the police, and saying, look, if you've got a parent, as soon as that parent enters into the system, you just refer them to us and we'll do the rest. Literally send through the referral goes straight through your website to our coordinators and to our practitioners, and they make contact with those families. And it's when we start having calls and conversations with families, when you really get to understand what's really going on for them. And, you know, majority of the time is a traumatic experience that happened years ago that's impacting this young person now. So that our clients tend to come through those means, but also through schools as well. So our outreach and street team, we work a lot in schools. We chaperone kids safely to school and stuff like that. We do summer programs and things. So a lot of our work is known in the community. We are fairly well established within the West Midlands. People tend to know First Class in one shape or another for some project or service that we deliver. But we have found that when it comes to the sort of the more gritty stuff, the things that people don't want to admit, that's where we have to go to them, and that's where we do bridge that gap. So we'll act on behalf of other organisations like city councils, like organisations out there that need to interact with the community. We'll do that on their behalf, because we know that, you know, if they've got jobs and training with their lovely leaflets, they can't just enter into the inner city community and start talking to young people. It's not going to happen. So we do that for them as well. So it's kind of it's two-pronged for us. It's a lot of outreach and engagement practically on the ground, but then it's also through the statutory organisations as well.
Yeah, so you've both got two kind of client groups, really. So for you, Danielle, you've got your corporate clients, mandatory training, local authorities, etc. And then you've got the people on the ground where you're really making the impact. And that's similar to you as well. So it's kind of identifying who they are through and reaching them through partnerships. And so thinking about now your audience, you got your money, you got your audience, you got your service. Tell me about your team, because you know we all start doing everything. Like no one can do it as well as we do it. You know, tell me about like hiring, and you know, because you're leaders. You know, this is your baby, but nevertheless, you are in leadership roles, and you know, management leadership, it really shows you who you are. So tell me about, you know, building your team. Like, how many is in your team, and how do you go about building that team? I'll start with you, Danielle.
Oh, great question. I started it on my own, and I look back now at what I did.
I knew you were going to say that.
To be able to deliver the training that I used to deliver. I don't know how I did it. Honestly, now I look back at it and go, my goodness, I was pulling jobs daily, plus in the evening and the next one. And I had 2 kids under 2. I was like, it was hectic. And I look at it now like, wow. And for the first 6 years, I was on my own. So I got capacity. I could only deliver the training that I could deliver. And then I started to use external freelance first aid trainers who I kind of vetted to see whether I liked them, to be honest with you. And my recruitment drive hasn't changed much. I've got to like you, right? It's like, what's my vibe saying? And all my interviews normally start off with a chat, and it's very informal. And that's how I kind of, you know, bounce off of people. I get their vibe from them. And years ago, I had somebody that was looking for a job. I was talking, saying, I can't do this anymore. I've just got so much to do. And it was a dinner party or a barbecue. And I remember this woman who I didn't really know very well actually saying, oh, there's a woman in my village who's looking for a job. She's been out of work for 3 years. She's got 2 kids. And she's looking for an admin job. And I was like, well, I need someone to help me with the admin. So, you know, we'll get together. She's been with me now for 6 years. So she joined the team, Caroline. Hi, Caroline. And kind of knows everything about the training side of the business. So she runs all of the training side. So she liaises with our clients. She liaises with our trainers. She runs all of the accounts. She looks after all of that. I have Ingrid, who looks after me as an individual, although she's moving on within the business, but she's kind of looking at more of a PR comms role now, because that's where her gift is. And I was like, after like 6 months, I was like, oh my gosh, She's looking after my diary and she does all of this stuff. Do you know what I mean? You fly. Do you know what I mean? Just go for it. I can look
Yeah.
after my own diary. I did it for 6 months before. So she's she's moving on in the business, and she's an absolutely integral part of the business. We've got somebody who looks after our business development and our relationships with our clients, because we get quite a lot of retained clients. They come back after 3 years. So we have to keep our relationships with them open, and we get an awful lot of referrals as well and recommendations, which is brilliant. And we've just had Tony join the team, who is our head of mental health and wellbeing delivery, because up until the pandemic, we were doing quite a lot of mental health first aid training, and I was doing it myself. But throughout the pandemic, I've had to take a step back and get other people involved, because that side of our business has just flown exponentially throughout COVID. So from that point of view, I employed Tony, who's joined the team last month, and he now looks after all of the mental health training and kind of coordination of training and strategic conversations with our clients, who are now looking at an awful lot at strategy around mental health and wellbeing within their companies. And I know this is going to sound really awful, so please excuse me, but we've been doing this for years, right? And after the pandemic, it's like, oh, so now people want this stuff. Now they want it. You know, we've been doing this stuff for years, and that's not to take it away. We've been through something highly traumatic, and I think businesses are now understanding that without their teams and without their staff, we are nothing. And we need to make sure that we are looking after it. So we do an awful lot of work around implementation of strategy around mental health and wellbeing, and the whole overall health and safety. So we're in an advantageous position to do that. So I'm lucky that I'm surrounded by a really good network of people who want the best for the business as well, and understand our values and our purpose. So
cool. No, that's good. I think people I work a lot with HR directors and managing directors about team, and I think well-being was something woolly. It was always a bit too you know, but now it's like, this is what it means. So definitely a shift. And what about you, Sabrina? Tell us about lessons learned.
So we started on our own. Myself and my husband, I always come back down to purpose. You know, you have something in you just know you've got to do it, and it's just it's your thing, it's your why. And it's very difficult for sometimes other people to understand your why, and to really want to do some of the stuff that we do. And it's very similar, actually, when we set up the charity, and we had to go through the different processes of doing things in a very, very sort of robust way. And it always had to be, but even more so now, because even more accountability and more explaining of who's working and who does what where. So we have had to bring on people with certain level of expertise in different areas. So we do have around 10 core members of the team, and they all do different things. You've got lead outreach and community engagement practitioners, and they're detached youth workers, but on another level, really. They understand grassroots community engagement, which is not something that is very easy to find nowadays. You can actually go into communities and really relate to people and understand where they're coming from. We do have therapeutic practitioners who do a lot of the forums and stuff with the parents of young people that are going through the youth justice system. And myself, we call her the glue. Her name's Clarice, and she's not glue. She literally just holds everything together. So my diary, which is constantly, I never know where I am, but she's that kind of person that just puts me where I need to be. But also make sure that all the projects, individual things, are running smoothly, and people are at meetings, and calendars are all synced, and all of that sort of stuff as well. We do have, as I said before, so we have the outreach team. We've got people for kitchen table talks. We've got project ambassadors. Now, one of the things that we've learned, and this is again a sustainable model, was we started off every project or every service with volunteers. And when those volunteers have become so amazing at what they do within the organization, to the point where they're winning tenders for in the area that they serve, they create their role. And that's exactly what's happened. So these young men who were going through a mental health resilience challenge, suffering with mild anxiety or depression, who come to the program, who've been attending the program for 2-3 years, who've then thought, actually, I can bring someone else up and I can mentor them. And has then thought, actually, I can show this mentoring program to the Commonwealth Games, which is what has happened, and win a whole tender and be able to sustain their own role. That's what it's about. And for me as a leader, that's what I want to see. I have no desire to be the head cook and bottle washer that I was before. So literally being HR, being law, being, you know, the tea maker, tidying up the office, paying payroll, doing this, doing that, doing everything. Like, actually, I'm good. I'll bring in the help. And it's not about protecting. It's not for me to hold on to. It's about sharing it with everybody and giving enough people space to rise. So we started off with 2, probably like 15 people who've either created roles for themselves, started off as volunteers, started off in other jobs, left their job and said, no, I'm going to come work with you guys. We're going to build this thing together. And that's how it's going to go. So that's how it's worked. We work strongly with volunteers. Our young people that come onto any youth program that we do, we stay in contact with them. Every time we do something, come. And if you keep coming, come and volunteer for us. Once you volunteer for us, actually, you might be able to work with us. And so one of our volunteers that started at 15, he was now 29, is a lead practitioner for one of our services as well. So I just know that model works.
Yeah, I think you just said a really important thing, and both of you said it, is that you have to let go and invite people in to help you realize your vision. Do you know what I mean? It's no man is an island, or no woman is an island. But I also don't underestimate, I'm guessing, it's a question for you. Did you learn a lot when you did it yourself?
Yeah, I learned a lot. I made so many mistakes. But it's the only way you can learn, isn't it? I learned so many. I learned things that I never knew I could do. And I think that's the thing. And I think, you know, what's beautiful now, that because we've been there where we've started this thing, you know what it takes. Like, I don't know if I ever want to go back to that person that was running around to everything that I was doing. But if it came to it, I know I could do it if I had to. You know, I can manage, like you said, Danielle, the lady's going to go and do something else. You can manage your own diary. You did it before. You can do it again. It's not the end of the world. I don't really want to manage my own diary, but if I have to, I will. Exactly. And I think that's the learning, that it's that confidence. You know your business, you know what it takes. And actually, if everyone else was to walk away tomorrow, I know what it takes to carry this thing forward. So yeah, I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah, it's true. You just don't underestimate those early days when you are doing everything. But I think, as you, Danielle, you reach the point and recognize you reach the point where I need some help. And it's about acknowledging that and opening up the door and start asking people and then inviting them in to give you that help, rather than thinking what we as Black women often do is managing everything by ourselves and never reaching out to anyone. So those of you who are listening, tuning in, don't forget to pop your questions in the ask questions box underneath the video, because in about at 8 o'clock I'll turn it over to you guys and just be reading your questions. But I wanted to just chat about COVID-19 and the impact that had on the business, for good and, you know, maybe not so good as well. Danielle, do you want to, because I know you touched on, you know, mental health and well-being now kind of taking off for you.
So COVID, do you know what? I think back on it, and again, it's like thinking back to the very beginning of your business. At a certain time, you don't quite know how you managed it, and I feel like that about COVID. I'm like, wow, that was only 2 years ago, nearly 2 years ago. And how is it that we managed, and we were in such a strange position, like a lot of businesses were. We did not know what was going to happen. We did not know whether or not we could train again. We didn't know whether or not our services was ever going to be needed, you know. And I think for me, in terms of the business and my business and my staff, it was first and foremost to make sure that they were all okay. Then we heard about this word furlough that was a bit weird, and furloughing. And I remember Caroline going, "You're not going to furlough me, are you?" And I was like, "Well, I don't know. I think I have to, or you know, do I save some cash? You know, you can stay at home, and I think I have to pay you 80%." Like, it was really one of them. And I belonged to a really awesome network of people who were there to help. And you know, my accountant ran like a clinic every Monday for this group of individuals, so he was giving out information about and advice about how we would survive. Ironically, as a business, we then realized very quickly that because of our mandatory requirements for companies that had to stay open, which we classified as key workers, we had to do their training for them.
Right.
which was weird because parents who were the children of key workers had to go to school. So my children were at home, but the parents of the children of key workers had to go to school. So I remember going to my children's school, and there was like 20 children in the school. There were like 5 teachers, but those teachers had to be qualified in first aid. So we were kind of dishing out free courses online that people could access. So we pivoted really quickly online with an e-learning platform, which we already had in place. So we offered that out to people that just wanted a little bit of kind of reassurance. But for the actual mandatory training, we went out gloved, masks, social distancing, not touching anybody, and showing them what to do if a kid collapses. Like, this is basic stuff. So we had to do that. And then in terms of the mental health, we won a big contract with a local authority in London to look after their mental health, which was going through before COVID. Literally, I remember having a meeting with them on the 16th of March. We locked down on the 23rd of March. So we were literally in negotiations for this training, and that had to get put on a back burner. But what we did do was provide one-to-one support for their staff that were on call for COVID responses 24/7. It was absolutely horrific. So looking after these staff members who were going through really difficult times personally, but then also having to support council house members, people that were going through difficulties themselves, food banks, mental health challenges, difficulties, breakdowns, a lot. And we were looking after their mental health. And to be honest with you, it was only after about a year that I realized that I was running on empty, absolutely running on empty. I was doing the training myself because my team were kind of, incapacitated, were not doing much. And also they had engaged with me and wanting me to speak with them. And I was burnt out at the end of it. It was a really difficult time for me because of the content of the things we were discussing were hard. And I also had my own family. I had my own worries to deal with. So from a mental health point of view, it was a really difficult time. But I pride myself on getting through that with a fantastic support group. My team were amazing. When I went to bed for 3 days and literally just did not answer emails and cancel courses and stuff because I'd kind of reached capacity, my team really kind of pulled in and said, right, that's it. You're done. You can't do any more. You need to kind of recuperate and go to bed. So I went to bed and watched SWAT on TV. For 3 days. Yes. It took its toll, right? It did. It took its toll mentally. It was a really difficult time, but I'm absolutely honored that we were able to do something.
Yeah, good for you. Good that you took time out though, because that's always going to be one of my questions in a second. It's really important to do that. And what about you, Sabrina? How did COVID kind of impact your business?
COVID made it kind of enabled us. We grew. I ended up onboarding and recruiting during COVID, which I think is an absolute honor and blessing because to be honest, everybody, we've done sessions with organizations that have had to close down during COVID, and we've had to do sort of, restoring your business and bounce back sessions with them and stuff like that. So for us to be able to deliver, but like you say, Danielle, the mental health project, the kids, see, for us, COVID is a thing, it's real. But for the families we work with, COVID is the least of their problem. They have got children that are not going to stay at home and only go outside once a day. They have got family members that are doing their own thing and don't follow the rules in any way. So this was just, it caused families, with children that are got behavioral stuff going on and court orders and stuff. You brought that child into the house and that household unit imploded. It was catastrophic. We had what would normally be a monthly forum for kitchen table talks face to face, went to a weekly forum on Zoom every day, every week for for 6 months straight. The parents were just absolutely breaking down. We ended up doing more forums, doing webinars. We had to teach them how to set routines. We had to teach them how to find space for their own mental health and well-being. Had mental health and well-being practitioners do workshops with them. Everything just turned up 150%. Nothing turned down for us. We went from just chugging along nicely to 100, 100 miles an hour. And as a result of that, people say working from home is a blessing. We always worked from home until the pandemic. And then we said, as soon as it's over, we need to go into offices because it was everywhere. I have 4 daughters, so they were all doing their schoolwork on a homeschooling. I'm on a Zoom and there's a 6-year-old there saying, what does this say? It was just crazy, but it never stopped for us. And because of the nature you know, of the conversations that you're having with people, the real dark nature, the dark places that they're in, that's in your home. And that we couldn't put it anywhere. So eventually it starts to wear you down. And, you know, I was conscious of our practitioners. We have supervision and clinical supervision anyway for them, as that's mandatory. It's just not an optional. But we had to ramp that up for them, because you're at home going through COVID yourself, or going through this pandemic, everyone's going through it together. But then you've got a mum on the phone, or child in custody, or, you know, COVID was sweeping through prisons and people weren't able to visit people. It was messy. It was very, 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 very messy for a lot of people. And a lot of the things that we take for granted in our go out for your one walk a day, you know, and only go out for food and exercise and for medicines and stuff like that. We had children, antisocial behavior, doing what they wanted and getting arrested and all of that in this time. So it was, for us, it didn't slow down. It did take its toll. I was exhausted, and then I caught COVID. And
oh wow,
yeah, that's another story altogether.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's a totally different story.
Totally. Yeah.
Just speaking on that, but you're okay from the COVID perspective? You haven't got long COVID or anything?
Well, it's left me now. It took near enough 7 or 8 months for it to come out of my system completely. Wow. It took ages. Yeah. I'm a healthy person, no underlying anything. My husband had it over for him in 3 days. Sabrina had to go to hospital, and yeah, wow. And then the long COVID symptoms and all of that, not pleasant. But I'm okay. I'm good. Thank God. I'm okay. I'm good.
Good, you're well. Just something before I hand over to the questions is that, just can you talk about, you know, that mental health and that well-being for yourselves? Like, what is your self-care or your spiritual practice? What is the thing that keeps you centered? Because you both ingest in quite a lot of other people's trauma. So how do you release that? Danielle.
Right. People, depending upon, and do you know what I was thinking when Sabrina was talking? When you run a charity, you tend to be a certain type of person. And the certain type of person is that person who is empathetic. They can take on board people. They can take on board other people's energy, and it's draining. And you have to be really clear with your own self-care and really boundaried with what you let in. I mean, I had a phone call literally earlier on today with a friend of mine who has a diagnosis of cancer, literally just told me. And I'm like, and I'm in Waitrose with my son, but you talk about like a double-edged sword. The double-edged sword is that I am empathetic and I'm caring and I love people and I really want to help. But with that comes this expectation that you are a person that people can go to all the time. And so without putting in clear boundaries, unfortunately, I didn't know that was going to happen. And I'm walking through Waitrose and I'm like, oh, right, okay. And you kind of like go straight into kind of, you know, work mode. So, okay, what's going on for you and how can you do, and let's have a conversation. I'm tired, I'm exhausted, but you do what you need to do. And then for me, that means that I then help offload that with someone else. My husband is extremely supportive of me and everything I do. I'll have a cry, I'll go to bed, I'll drink lots of lovely herbal tea. I like the warmth. I will, you know, wrap up with my kids. I love TV because TV is really boring. I know that sounds a bit random, but it's escape. I don't have to think about stuff, and it's really basic. So people come into work and they're like, oh my gosh, have you seen like Ambulance? It was really sad. I'm like, I can't watch that. Or, you know, something really traumatizing on TV. Like, did you see this? It was really difficult. I'm like, I can't watch that.
The Real Housewives.
I can't. I have to watch really basic things that can make me laugh, or you know, that make me feel all warm and lovely. Or like I said, American police dramas is my thing at the moment, which you know, is stuff that I can just escape to. Lots of walks. I love walking. I do meditate. I listen to podcasts. I've got my own podcast, but I listen to podcasts and I chill, listen to music. My husband and I are big ravers, so putting music on, he's got decks at home. So if I'm in a really bad mood, I'll ask him to play me some amapiano music or some, you know, some house or something, and I'll have a bit of a
Love
Yes,
it.
love it.
So yeah, that's my self-care routine.
Love it. Love that. And what about you, Sabrina?
I love that, and SWAT every time. Love SWAT.
I need to add it. Is it on Netflix?
You
I
need
need
to
to
watch
add it
it.
to
It's
my
amazing. Yeah,
list then.
you gotta
I
like
need to
SWAT.
watch it.
For me, so I'm a Christian, born again Christian, and my faith
Yeah,
helps
me
me
too.
every day. My
Yeah.
faith helps me. My praying is my way out. I journal a lot. I write a lot. I get my thoughts out. I have journals for different things, like one for like just random thoughts, one for like ideas, one for like plans and things like that. So I journal a hell of a lot. But I think for me, on top of all of that, so that's a lot of stuff already, really, like praying and seeking God and just spending time quiet time is an amazing thing, especially because, like Danielle rightly said, we do give a lot, and I find it hard not to. So it could be anything. If somebody's said, oh, don't feel well, and I want to solve it, I want to help you, I want to fix it, I want to do something, but in doing that you do drain yourself. So me and my husband do spend a lot of time talking, and one of the things that we adopted many years ago, that I capture in my book, it's called the 8 o'clock. And so my children are various ages now, but at the time they were all young enough to go to bed at 8 o'clock, or at least go upstairs at 8 o'clock. And so me and him would have this 8 o'clock, and TV would get turned off, phones would get put away, laptops, devices, all of that stuff's gone. Have a nice drink, something to eat, snacks or whatever, and just talk. And how are you? And I'm all right isn't good enough. How are you really? What is going on for you? What are you thinking? How are you feeling? What did you think about the meal? You just being really mindful in the response, which is a real challenge for someone who's always thinking about other people, because it means you have to think about yourself, which I struggled with for years. I'll put my children first, I'll put my husband first, I'll put everybody else first but me. But having caught COVID, I learned really quickly, like, I can't breathe. That means I need to put myself first, because I need to be able to work. I need to live for my children. I need to live for the things that I've got to do. And so that during that time, I used a lot of headspace meditation apps just to get me to stop and to just to center and ground myself. I listen to endless sermons, endless podcasts, read my bedside cabinet. I started off with like 2 books, but there's like books stacked up the side of the wall now. Like,
every time someone recommends one, you buy it.
Right, literally. The worst thing is, I thought I wouldn't be able to get through them. I've read them, so it's like, what do I do now? I need a Kindle. Start buying the books and use a Kindle. But there's a stat. So I read a lot. I go for walks. I spend time. I do the school run. Most afternoons to pick the girls up from school. And what I started to do is leave the office a little bit early, just to park, 1, to find parking, but 2, just to be still before the next thing happens. And that for me helps. I've adopted a really good bedtime routine, and this is like really harder for a lot of adults, because you just get stuck in your, got to do this, got to do that, got to finish the day, got to finish off everything, and before you know it's like 2 o'clock in the morning. But I've started to go to bed between 10 o'clock. And that's really early. I know for an adult, that's quite early.
I'm 9:30. I'm half 9.
This is music to my ears. Because when I say I go to bed at 10, people look at me like, "You're what?"
No, don't worry, no, that's great.
You don't want to meet me if I don't sleep before midnight. You don't want to see me the next day. It doesn't work for me. This
is the thing. But it starts by like taking off my smartwatch. So even while I was here and we were getting ready for this, I took my smartwatch off, because I know that I'm coming out of that zone where I'm thinking about what's next. I don't want nobody to bother me. Started to put my phone on bedtime mode so it doesn't bother me. I don't get any notifications. So there's loads of different things, and stopped looking at social media.
I love these tips. I love these transitions that you have. I'm going to steal some. I love like that transition between, you finishing your work and then you're going to go back into mommy mode. Having that still time so that you can actually then be present when you're with them. You're not just bringing in what you've just left in the office into your time that you have.
Well, the reason why I had to do that is I realized they pick up, even if I'm not saying anything or particularly showing anything, they just pick it up in my spirit that something's not right or something happened today. And they're we've kind of set ourselves up really, because the same way my husband will say to me, how are you really, the same way my 7 and 8 year old will say, Mom, how are you, how was your day, but how are you really? So I can't just flag them off with, I'm great.
Sabrina, do you know what, I'm so like warm and fuzzy with this, because that one question in terms of how are you, and then how are you really, or how are you, but how are you, asking that question, such a powerful tool to be able to get our children to start asking that, and to understand and pick up on those, the energy of what it looks like, and how your face is feeling, and how your voice is, those changes, those really subtle nuances between, oh yeah, hi, and hi, I know my mom, that's not right, that's what's wrong with her. It's such a powerful question, and it's something we always teach on our mental health first aid training.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you're already there, girl, you're already there, how are you, and actually, how are you? Great conversations can be led from that.
I love that. Oh, I've got loads of questions. Let me pay attention. I'm loving this conversation. I could talk to you both tonight. Well, till 10. Oh, sorry, 9:30 for Danielle. Right. So first question, how did the both of you stay true to your purpose when things were uncertain? Do you want to start that one, Danielle? Do you want me to repeat it, or did you get it?
No, I did. I got it. So my purpose is the lifeblood of my business. And actually throughout COVID, throughout the pandemic, it was even more so apparent that those people who desperately needed the work that we were doing were the people who were missing out. They had a lack. And it's fascinating because I heard this thing that came, and we delivered, I designed a course called How to Look After Your Mental Health Throughout the COVID-19 Pandemic, and we ran them for free. They were on Zoom, and we had them on LinkedIn. We had loads and loads of people connecting, and it was just a safe space for them to be able to offload their own situations and to speak and to have some advice about signposting and all sorts of stuff. And I remember there was somebody who said, we're all in the same boat. And I was like, we are not in the same boat. And I remember putting it up on a piece on a PowerPoint saying, we're all in the same storm. That storm is the pandemic, right? But our boats are very different. There are some people who are on luxury yachts, do you know what I'm saying? And then there are some people who are barely on a raft. So those people that have got 4 children in a flat, can't homeschool, have no garden, can't get out, they haven't got the same privilege as I have, for example. I've got a house with my 2 children. So there was this kind of fight between, well, everybody's going through it, and actually us in the charitable arena understanding that that's not the case. And Sabrina mentioned earlier on how her families, the pandemic was just another thing. It was just another thing to add to the difficulties that they had. So for me, in terms of the purpose, it was amplified that work needed to be done, and it needed to be done well, because the people that we work with were desperate at that time. So the purpose never went anywhere. In fact, like I said, it was amplified for me.
Brilliant. And is that the same for you, Sabrina?
I think so. I think absolutely. I think it clarified the purpose even more. I think, sometimes you're doing things and you just get into the day-to-days and the routine of what you do. But it actually, when that time hit, and I think when the first lockdown hit on 20th of March, and I remember speaking to our parent ambassadors for one of the projects and asking them how they're doing, and them saying, well, I can't, they're the kind of people that will have to leave the house and will have to go and find their children, or have to go and speak to somebody, or console a neighbor, or whatever it is. And so talking to them, it just kind of put things into perspective. Like, for me, this is not negotiable. What we do is essential. I referred it to another blue light service, that if we're not here, I don't know what will happen to some of these families and some of those young people that we work with, and even the ones that we're not working with directly, but indirectly through, I don't know, it could be food hampers, it could be whatever it is. It could just be them watching us on social media and sharing information and telling them where to go. We won a contract during that time to communicate the COVID messages to the Black community. And I think it's challenging, because everybody has their own ideas of what COVID is and what it isn't, and all of that stuff. And just to know that, okay, whether you believe it's real or not, whatever your take on COVID is, I just need you to be safe, and I want you to live, and I want you to be healthy, and I want you to be well. And that was a responsibility for me that, no matter how hard it gets, I just know that without some of the work that we do, I genuinely don't know what will happen to the families. And that for me amplifies it. It just makes it more purposeful.
It's like your businesses were created for such a time as this.
Wow, exactly that.
Literally. So I have another question. So how did you find the optimal balance between income and impact? Do you want to take that one, Sabrina? The optimal balance between income and impact.
Optimal balance, that's a really good question, because it is it's essential that we have the income, but the impact has to be far and above any income that we get. And I think that is one of the beautiful things about having project ambassadors, about having programs and services that with or without money will still be there. One of the reasons why we established First Class in the way we did as a charity was that regardless of whether we had money to come in, I wanted to create pathways, and soft pathways. So if a young person, for instance, came to our summer program, we ran a summer program, but we partnered with church, we partnered with mental health programs, we partnered with other people. That person comes to us, they get us to start with, and that might have been a funded thing, that might have been a contract that we won. But off the back of that, they access the food bank, they access jobs, they access opportunities, they access training, they change their life, they change the social economic landscape for where they are, and actually they reduce the figures for youth violence. So for me, it's about, yes, I need to make the income, but the balance for me, it tilts. Once I've made that money, the sustainability and what I do with that has got to far supersede whatever income comes in. And it always means that regardless of whether there's money or not, the young person that hits us at the point where it's free will have access to that job, that training, that opportunity, that food bank, that whatever it is. That doesn't rely on income, and that's the beautiful thing. So that's where it is for me. It's not quite equilibrium at all, but there is sort of like a model where we do need that income, but it's not the be all and end all of everything that we do.
Yeah, I mean, the impact is huge. It has a massive ripple effect, and it becomes generational, doesn't it?
Yeah, and that's what we see. I mean, we see that today, as I said, we started in 2005 as First Class Youth. It's 2021 now. Young person, Claudia, comes to us at the age of 15 just to attend a program, just to come on a Friday evening, have some food, meet some people, ends up volunteers her entire life with First Class until she works with us. She's been to uni, she's left the city, she's come back to us. She now leads, she enables other young people to do the same thing, and that's what it is. That will happen without funds.
It's invaluable. You can't put a price on that. And what about you, Danielle? Do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, so it's interesting. When I was listening to Sabrina talking, first of all, I just salute you, girl, because my goodness, the sustainability and the desire and the drive and the legacy that you're leaving behind in terms of the business, doing the business and the charity and what it does without us, I think is the bit, right? It has to work without us.
Yeah.
So for me, in the beginning, I remember burning myself out because I was so concerned with impact. I was so driven by, right, I'm going to do that course. So if somebody said I couldn't afford it, I'll go, don't worry, it's all right, I'll go and do it, because I can't charge it out to our trainers because we have to pay the trainers. So I'll do it. I'll do that one, and I'll do that one, and I'll do that one. And it's only when I got to the point of burnout and I was wanting to give so much that I was almost it was not benefiting the business because it was unsustainable in that model. So that forced me to then think about what was the most important message that I could have as a business. And I realized that was all about the the CSR, the corporate social responsibility piece, that drive of working with businesses so that they can see what we do and they can back us so that we can then have that same impact. But in the beginning, it wasn't that strategic. It was just desperation to get the work done. And off of the back of that, then I could have easily burnt out if other people didn't intervene and say, Danielle, this is unsustainable. You can't do this. I was like, but I really want to, one more company. I've got one more in me. It's like, just couldn't do that, right? So it was a matter of sitting back and going, okay, how can we make it that the business doesn't need me to bust my backside to make sure that I deliver impact? And that was the turning point for me. And now that means then that the business is sustainable without me.
Yeah, absolutely. Love that. You both said that a couple of times during this. It needs to be fit to work. It needs to work without you. I think there was a book that I read, and the name just escaped me now. It was in my head, but it's gone. But there's a quote that will stay with me forever. It's like, if your business can't run without you, you don't have a business, you have a job. And as an entrepreneur, it's a poorly paid one.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love
Absolutely. I couldn't agree with that
that.
any more than you spend so many hours building and working, and you go on your software for finance and you try and do billable hours. You cannot bill the hours that you do setting up and running an organization. It is not possible. And even when you try and invoice for your time, if people really knew the time it takes, like, you can't do it. It's not sustainable. So you have to systemize and process to the point where someone else can do it, and you can relieve yourself of, as I said, of being head cook and bottle washer, which we've all been at some point.
I have another question for you. What was surprising about starting a business based around charity and helping people? So Danielle, do you want to start that one?
I found it difficult in the beginning that the choices I made as running a CIC meant that I was segregated from a lot of conversations. And what I mean by that is that business is business, or so you think. Actually, running a social enterprise means that I straddle business and charity sector, which is hard, because the charity sector are like, well, you're not really a charity and you'd only going after my cash, all right, because like you're a CIC and you can trade. And I've talked about what that looks like and my purpose behind that and my values behind that. But then organizations and corporations go, well, you've got CIC. What does that mean? Is it you're a bit wishy-washy? You're not a bit like fluffy, are you? Do you actually know about business? That kind of thing. So you kind of get this reputation of, business for good and all that stuff. And I'm like, well, actually, you can have both. So I spoke at the UK Black Business show on Saturday. Yeah, and it was awesome. And there was another Danielle on stage, and we were talking about running businesses, and she's a deep tech business.
Oh wow.
So that means that her business is very sexy to investors, and they want to put millions in it. She's got 1.5 million pound in funding, and I'm like, wow. And here I am sitting there going, I've had a grant for 25 grand maybe, maybe, so over the years. And people, and I said to them actually at that point, I said, Danielle's business is sexy to investors because there's a return on investment and it's amazing and it's fantastic. Yeah. And then there's my business, and it's not sexy to investors. I will never gain investment from anybody because there's no return on investment. I'm a non-profit organization. But my business is still sexy. Thank you very much. And that's what I said, on the stage. I was like, because I believe in the work I do, and my passion is to make sure that businesses are aware of their capabilities of working with us as the charitable sector and helping us deliver impact, but also get something back from it.
Yeah.
So for me, that was really, really important to be able to make sure that people were aware of that.
I think your structure is the best of both worlds for people who want to trade but also have charitable, kind of ambitions or an ethos to their organization. That's a really good way of doing it. And what about you, Sabrina? Can you speak to that question?
Yeah, so I've had two similar scenarios where it's sort of like, well, you're a charity, so people love the charity, don't they? And that means everything we do is free. And that means we are charitable, so we don't charge. So, because we're a charity, right? So it's free. Yeah. That's been an interesting journey. That's the truth, though. That's the truth. It has been a journey in that. And also getting people to understand the value of what you're actually doing. You honestly don't think that people are here just, by happenstance. This costs money to do, so you have to pay for services. That's there's nothing wrong with that. That's an honest thing to do. But yeah, having that conversation and learning that was you'd have thought that would have been normal, but it wasn't. So that was an interesting ride to go along. And then I think the other one has been kind of entering the charity space as Black female CEO. That's been a challenge. People looking at me thinking I'm kind of 12 maybe because I look a little young. and not understanding that I have a wealth of experience and knowledge. And that's been a challenge sometimes to kind of overcome that. You know, we featured in a series called Charity So White, which was just talking about challenging the stereotypes and of the white male pale stale, you know, dominance of white charity. And actually there's amazing Black-led organizations out there doing fantastic work who don't get the recognition. Frustrating for us sometimes that we are in this space, we're a charity, you know, we'll apply for things, we'll apply for, say, funding and stuff like that. And when you find out you're unsuccessful, that's for okay, you know, we take the wins and we take the losses, it's fine. But when you find out that it went to a ginormous Tesco type charity and they then try and subcontract you for £5.50 to do the work that they've won the £550 million to do, that's the challenge that we face entering the charity space. Charities become, it is quite sexy, it's quite attractive to corporate groups, but it's also like, well, if you're not the Tesco of the charity sector, then we don't actually want to work with you. So it has its pluses and its minuses, but that's nothing that I'm afraid of. I think it's about just smashing through those ceilings and doing more to get us out there.
Good for you. Good for you. And in terms of your businesses moving forward, a question which I think will probably have to be my final one, which is like I said, I could talk to you both forever, is like, do either of you have any global ambitions for your enterprises? Like, what's next? Look at you nodding your heads. I knew you would say yes.
Yes, I do.
I'm not going to have time for all the questions, but I want to ask this one for sure.
Oh my God.
So Danielle, go on then. Tell us.
When I first started my business, people used to say, well, what do you want? And I said, like, world domination, as if they did not know.
But what else?
What? You know, how do you not know that I want to take over the world? And actually, you know, from a brand point of view, we are lucky enough to have a UK-wide capacity because we have trainers that are freelance trainers that work across the UK. So we have training courses all over the UK that we can facilitate. That's fine for now. In terms of the way in which the business works, we've had quite a lot of interest from people who are expats, so people that know our business here and have gone to other countries and said, I think that your brand would work really well here. So one of our trainers, for example, has just moved to Portugal. She's thinking of setting up an ABC Live support in Portugal.
Wow.
You know, we've got somebody that's over. So we've got these little opportunities. The irony is that when she actually looked into it further, their health and safety requirements are not as, they don't exist. They don't exist over there.
So you can build something from the grassroots.
Yeah. So it's then, so actually, how can that work, right? So then it would be that you look at expat community that you're going to be teaching. So there's lots of opportunity to kind of expand. And I personally am just looking at the UK at the moment, but there is definitely potential for further afield.
I love that, like franchising, it's, you know, building something from the grassroots, as in changing policy in countries. Wow, that's good. And what about you, Sabrina?
Definitely world domination. That was first on my list, but I also I definitely want to take over. The first class nation is what we wanted to build, a first class nation. So that
love that.
Many people all over the world part of First Class Foundation. And the reason for that is because we know that the work that we face, the problems that we face here are not solely, you know, they're not just related to the UK. Currently our reach is sort of just shy national, so we're doing a lot of stuff in a lot of different places. And I know that one of the things that we started off was just a little project just in a coffee shop is now something that has spread and there's interest for it wider than where we are now. So I know that there's reach and there's definitely scope to take things on a national and an international scale. But I think for us as well, it's about partnering. And one of my biggest ambitions is to go back to the lands where we've come from. So, you know, Caribbean, Africa, and really restore and build our own thing and our own people. That's my heart, that's my passion. We've partnered with a school in Ghana, so we do a lot of fundraising there. My husband went out there and did some first class work in Ghana 2020 January, just before the pandemic all started off. So we've got a real ambition to just sort of build really, and to build a first class foundation for young people to stand on. So that can happen anywhere in the world, we know young people need it. So for us, it's just wherever we can go, we're going next. But gotta conquer the UK first, and then we'll
I
take the
think
world.
it's great because you're positioning yourself as one, as you talked about them earlier, like those, because there are charity brands, and there's no reason why you can't be one of those big brands.
Yeah,
Do you know what I mean?
absolutely.
Own right. Oh, Danielle, Sabrina, I have to like draw this to a close. I'm inspired. I'm just the energy that's coming from you both in terms of, because so many people have a misconception about running social enterprises. They really think they have to rely purely on grant funding to survive. The funding goes, the charity closes. You know, whereas you two are both very entrepreneurial in your thinking, in the way you're running your businesses, yet still having a massive impact on people's lives. And I like dip to you and say, well done, congratulations, and I wish you all the very best for your businesses. And to those of you who are still with us online, I can't see you, so it's really weird. I feel like I'm speaking to myself. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion. Remember, go to preciousAwards.com so you can get your tickets to the Precious Awards, which take place in person at the Waldorf Hotel in London on the 24th of I was going to say November, this month. November. Do let us know, connect with us at Precious Online on Twitter, on Instagram. And actually, Sabrina, Danielle, do you want to share your Instagram or your social media handles? How can people reach you?
Yeah, so for me, you can follow me on Instagram at justsdennis, or you can get in touch with us. You can follow our website. So if you go to www.firstclassfoundation.org, that's www.firstclassfoundation.org, or follow me on Insta at justsdennis.
Brilliant. And Danielle?
Excellent. So I've got a personal brand, which is daniellebridge.co.uk, where I do lots of talks and stuff around the mental health world. But my business is www.abclifesupport.co.uk. In terms of my Instagram.
Danielle, I'm going to interrupt you there and say, can you say it again slower? Because you said it really
yeah, I'm speaking quite fast. Right, so daniellebridge.co.uk for my own personal brand work, and abclifesupport.co.uk is the business, and my Instagram handle is daniellebridge_CEO, and I can also be found on LinkedIn.
Love it, love it. And if you want to follow me, you can find me, just use my name, as you can see on your screen, Arit Eminu. That is my handle on Twitter, Instagram, and on LinkedIn, or you can find me on ariteminu.com. And thank you all for joining us, and big thanks, Sabrina and Danielle, for spending the last hour and a half talking with me. I've really thoroughly enjoyed the discussion tonight. Thank you so much. You've been great. Take care. Bye.
Thank you.